All right, we're good.
Poor guy. You need a tripod.
Yeah, I should have brought one. I didn't think of it.
I'm doing great.
Yes, you
Yeah.
are doing
All right, folks, take a look. All of the sticky up part at the back is the ramus. You're with me?
Yes.
Okay, the back, yeah, it's probably ramus. At the back is the condyle. If you memorized all the parts on 106 you're supposed to memorize, you know that a condyle is a sticky out part that's rounded. Good? Usually where you articulate. That's exactly what that is, yes?
Yes.
Now, the coronoid process in front of it, coronoid, do you agree? Especially if you put a little angle like this, it's very pointy, yes?
Yes.
Okay. In anatomy speak, when you see coronoid or coracoid, think bird beak. Okay? You're looking at me, but I'll make it make more sense. Magpies, crows, the really smart, clever birds, they're corvids. And the Latin word for the corvid beak was the coronoid. Got it? They're like crow's beak. I don't care how you remember it. You're going to see it again when we talk about parts of the scapula. Good? Yep. All right, but the coronoid is going to be this part on this model. It's where the screws are. Good? All right, that's your coronoid. This is your condyle, the condyle. Both of those are on the ramus, the sticky up part, ramus. Good? Now, there are other things they want you to know. We did alveolar margin. There's only one thing left, the mental foramen. Huh? Pick up your skull, look at the mandible, and look at a hole right there. That is the mental foramen. That's a big deal. All right? Have you ever watched a horror movie? Watch Jurassic Park. Okay? And you see the velociraptor snarl at somebody. Or you see one of those stupid anaconda movies. I know.
It's called Anaconda.
Yeah, and Ice-T was in it, right?
Ice Cube.
Ice Cube? Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Ice-T was the police show. Yeah, he was in the band called Cop Killer. I know that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No. He was in the band Body Count with the song Cop Killer. There we go. Yeah, I know who he is.
Oh.
I really do, I promise. Okay. Yeah, his wife's name is Coco. See, I really know who he is. Okay. Anyway, that's Ice-T. You're right, I said it wrong. It was Ice Cube. But Ice Cube was in the Snake movie, giant snake movie. Yes? You with me? And you saw at one point the snake face off with him. And it snarled, it raised its lip like a dog would. Cannot happen. No possible way. They don't have nerves to the muscles to do it. Do you know how we know? Well, more important, we know because they can't. No snake can do it. But this hole right here, if you ever see a paleontologist saying, oh, well, this was a mammal-like reptile, but not a true mammal, you're like, how do they know that? They weren't alive back then. How do they know? That hole, nerves come out of it that innervate the lips that let you move them. No hole, no lip movement. You just have open mouth, closed mouth. Does that make sense? So maybe open mouth hiss, but not the snarl. Not the velociraptor, not the big ugly snake. Good? Clear? All right, but that's a mental foramen. I'm going to give you one more that's not on the list. Make it easy. Anywhere where things come together could be called a symphysis. Are you with me? So here's a famous one. I am holding this skeleton by the pubic symphysis, where the two pubis bones come together. And you can see it has fibrocartilage there in between. Why? It gives it some give, all right? If you have to pass a baby's head through there, it might be good to have a little bit of flex. Does that make sense? All right. Here, we call this the mandibular symphysis. You're like, well, what's coming together? Well, in an embryo, this is not one bone. This is two bones that will grow together at the mandibular symphysis.
Some predator type crap going on.
What?
We got some predator type crap going on. Where
Would I do that?
Comes out.
Oh, close. You're very close. So this is where they fuse in us and most other mammals. Almost all that I know of mammals. But if you wanted to look at us, I could pull up a video later. We're not doing it now. We got to move fast. If you look at a snake eating, like a boa constrictor eating a rat, I can show you a video later. They can walk their jaws forward and then pull it in. Walk, pull it in. Move the jaws independently, separately. Why? Because they don't have bone at this symphysis. They have stretchy ligaments.
So they don't have to let it go with a mouse.
Right, exactly. They can do that. How could they possibly swallow something wider than them? It's because the ligaments let them go at the symphysis. With sound effects, I promise. Okay, not with sound effects. Does this make sense? Everybody good? You had your hand raised.
No,
Question?
we're good.
All right. Okay. Moving on. So we've done the mandible. We've done all the features we needed on the mandible. We finally hit the second page. Sinuses. There are, in the frontal bone, there is a frontal sinus. None of these models are going to show it, but if you had a model that had a cut like this, you can see just the left, just the right. What you're going to see is that there's compact bone here, there's compact bone here, and in between the two, you're going to have spongy bone, and right down about here, there are going to be two on each side. One on each side, so there are two. You're going to have spaces, and sometimes they even grow together to one space. Compact bone front, compact bone back. We're running out of time. I'd love to tell you about W. Camus Bell and elephants. The short version is elephants, they don't have the front compact bone. They just have a sinus. Talk to me later about what that meant. Anyway, but yeah, there's a hole there, a sinus. What I'm going to do to make all of these easy, everybody has their phone open with this study guide, yes? All right, I'm going to pull up a picture. What I'm actually going to do is pull up the quiz that I told you guys. You remember I activated at the beginning the quiz over parts of the skull?
Yes.
We're going to go to the questions on the sinuses because it has the best picture I know of. That's why I used it. And I'm not going to go looking for this picture. It's a picture that shows all the sinuses really, really well. But you have an ethmoid, you have a sphenoid, you have maxillary, you have a frontal, and you have mastoid. All of those. So let's go down to the sinus questions. By the way, since this is being recorded, I'll go ahead and say these pictures are all Creative Commons out of the Wikimedia Commons. It is legal to use them. Got it? Now I do need to add sources, but these are pictures you're allowed to use. Took a pain to find good ones. All right, pass the foramen. Oh, did I get my sinuses? Yeah, okay, landmarks. Sinuses must be coming up. There we go, sinuses. So, green here, these are the frontal sinuses. They're in the frontal bone. They're hollow spaces in the frontal bone between the front and the back of it. Good? Sorry, between the anterior surface and the posterior surface. All right, right here, this is ethmoid bone. You can tell because you can see that's right where the cribriform plate would be, yes? None of nods, so yeses.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so ethmoid bone, ethmoid sinus. Hey, what's this one? Right below the soloturcica would be the what? S word. Sphenoid sinus, good. These on each side of the upper jaw would be the maxillary sinuses. And the only one not shown back here would be the mastoid. Are we good? Okay, so you've got our sinuses. Since none of these are cut open, you can't see them on the model, so we have to use an illustration. I think that's a good one. All right, so we got that. Now, hyoid bone. Right there. The bone at the top of the larynx.
It's the Adam's apple.
No, the Adam's apple is right below that. The anatomy name for the Adam's apple, and you'll get this when you do respiratory system. You have a bunch of cartilages that make up the larynx, the voice box, okay? Like you have the arytenoids and little tiny corniculates, and the thyroid cartilage is the big one. And the Adam's apple, everybody put their hand on the Adam's apple and then swallow. You felt it go up, yes? That point is the laryngeal prominence of the thyroid cartilage. Like I said, you don't need to know that for this bone stuff. You'll need to know it when you do respiratory. Good? But when you swallowed and everything went up, muscles up here pulled on the hyoid, which pulled on the larynx cartilages underneath and raised the whole thing up. The reason is that one of those cartilages, the epiglottis, the elastic cartilage that's not the ear, when it's raised up, like here we have the trachea, the glottis, the opening of the trachea, and above it we have the epiglottis. You with me? Okay, so when you swallow and everything is raised up, this pushes on the back of the tongue and gets forced down. That means whatever you're swallowing goes over the glottis, over the hole, and instead goes down the esophagus behind. Good?
Oh, that to make sure you don't breathe food.
Yeah, so you don't breathe food or water, exactly. Does this make sense? Everybody good? Yeah. All right, but that all happens from raising the hyoid bone. Are we good?
Yeah.
Right, so you know what the hyoid are? Now the vertebral column. A typical vertebra has a body. We did this before, but it has a body. Yes, that's what the disc would rest against. Okay? It has a vertebral foramen. That's the big hole. Okay? It has a spinous process. That's the sticky up part with 3 different animals I said to use to diagnose them. If it's square and blocky, you've got lumbar, think moose. If it's long and pointy, think anteater, think thoracic. If it's forked like a cool brontotherium, megaceratops, you think cervical. But not all the cervical are that way because the atlas doesn't have the spine. The C1 at the top against the skull doesn't have the spine. No spinous process. Good? All right, so we've talked about spinous process. Superior and inferior articular surfaces. Ones that stick up, that stick down and touch other vertebrae. Yes? Okay, so you've got that. We did the transverse processes. They're the ones that stick off to the side. Here we have a transverse process, sticking off to the side. Think of them as the top of a letter T. Transverse, okay? Capital letter T. But if you're dealing with that cervical vertebrae, they're much lower. They're near the bottom of this arch. And when they spread out, they're wider because they have a hole through them for the vertebral artery. Are we good? Right. If you see these holes, you got a cervical vertebrae. No questions asked. Because it's for the vertebral arteries. Good? All right. Intervertebral foramina. We haven't done that yet. Let's do that. That's super, super easy. A foramina is a what? I'm looking for an H word. Don't let me down, people. It's a hole. Right? A foramen is a hole.
Yes.
Okay. So, let's take 2 of these that are adjacent that go together. We could do it on that model there too, but this is easier for everyone to see. Do you see these 2 go together? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see a gap where they don't meet? Let me try it again. Do you see a notch here?
Yes.
Look at the other one. Do you see? Okay, yeah, that's perfect. This hole right here that is between the 2 vertebrae, half of it is a notch on the upper one, half of it is a notch on the lower one. That is the intervertebral, that means in between the vertebrae, foramina or hole. What that is where the spinal nerves are going to come out. Good? Are you with me? Take a look on this model and make it easier for people. If we are looking, okay, not this one. Let's see. Which one? Oh, right here. This is perfect. All right. You see what looks like a hole, but it's a space where there's a notch in the lower and a notch in the upper, and there are spinal nerves coming out. That hole made out of 2 notches, is the intervertebral foramina. Good? Everybody solid? All right, so we've talked about all the things on the generic, this is a vertebrae. Good? Now, specific ones. The cervical, you got 7. Yes, you need to know the 7, the 12 do the thing, okay? But you have 7 of these. The 2 at the top are special. You need to know their names. We did it already. The atlas, which holds up the world, well, the atlas holds up the skull. It articulates with the skull's occipital condyles. Are we good? Yes. The one below it, that things rotate around, the skull and the atlas rotate around, or the axis, just like the world rotates around the axis. Yeah. Oh, the sticky up part is the dens or the odontid process. I'll take either one. They're using dens in the study guide, that's fine. I think the book uses odontid process. I don't care which one you use. Dens might be easier to remember because less syllables. All right. And cervical are the only ones that have holes through the transverse processes. We call them transverse foramen because they're holes through the transverse process. Are we good? All right. Thoracic vertebra, we have 12. You know they tend to be narrow and point downward, yes? Okay. Lumbar, we have 5. You know that their spinous process is chunky, is blocky, kind of like a moose nose. You with me? Okay. The sacrum, this is the middle of your pelvis. Right here, this is the sacrum. It's one bone, but it's a bunch of vertebrae that are fused together. Do you see all of these holes here in the sacrum? You have a sacrum to look at, yes? Nerves going in and out. Those are the intervertebral foramen, except that we've now fused all the vertebrae into one bone. Good? Sacrum is just fused vertebrae. All right. So let's see what we have. Sacrum has a body. Now it has something they're calling the medial sacral crest. What is that? Well, medial means to the middle, yes? Yes. Okay. It's this right here, this lumpiness. It's the fused together spinous processes. Good? Makes sense? Yeah. All right. And the sacral foramina. All right. A foramen would be a hole, so sacral foramina.
Those are the holes in the sacrum.
It's the one at the top, but I'm going to double check because I don't want to leave you guys wrong. Good? Let's double check it. Okay, we're getting there. So interior and posterior surfaces of the sacrum. Nerves exit the canal through those intervertebral growth other portions. Okay, I think we got it. The upper and lower ends of the sacrum. Okay. That's what they're calling these intervertebral foramina, the anterior sacral. Yes, yeah, sacral foramina is just what they're calling the holes that would have been the intervertebral. Are we good? Yes. All right. Is there anything else on this list?
The coccyx, I think.
Okay, the coccyx is the tailbone. All right, we do have other things. We're running out of time. Obviously, you're trying to finish up. Let's very quickly. The breastbone is your sternum, okay? The top of the sternum here is the manubrium. The bottom is the xiphoid process. If you see people get in a fight and somebody uppercuts, like, oh, I'm going to knock the wind out of them, the solar plexus, this is fragile. They can break that off and shove it into a lung. It's not a good thing. It's delicate. Are we clear? Okay.
Yes.
So that is your xiphoid process. Oh, you need to know that. So manubrium, oh, you need to know that. The main part is the body. What they're not saying here, you can see suture lines. You can feel the lumps. Those form as separate pieces that we call sternebrae and then fuse to be the sternum. Good? Good. All right. Let's see. Ribs, 12 pairs. We're going to talk about true, false. True ribs have their own connection to the sternum. Are we good?
Yes.
False ribs would be these, where like these are sharing a cartilage connection. You would agree?
Yes.
Okay. Floating ribs do not connect at all. They're just hanging in the flesh. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones we worry the most about getting broken because they're not attached. There's no rigidity in the front. Does that make sense?
Yes.
One of my acquaintances was in a bad car accident over the weekend and broke 4 ribs. I haven't seen any X-rays, radiographs, but I have a guess they probably would be these.
Those are the most common that break.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not a radiologist, but that sounds sound to me. Sounds reasonable. Is there anything else? Or we got fontanelles. Okay, we don't have a baby skull here to look at. The fontanelles, that's a fancy name for the soft spots. Good?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. We're done. We've done it all. Thank you.